Hello everyone, back tuning into today's second video, doing the GWV Sunday Round Up. For today's second video, you're going to have your usual Sunday lunchtime eclectic mix of this and that. We're going to look at solar activity, the Arctic oscillation, North Atlantic oscillation, what's happening in the oceans, and the weather for the next week to 10 days as well, and a few other bits and pieces will be thrown in too. Earlier today, we released the autumn season model roundup, the second one, getting together 12 long-range models, having a look and see what they're all showing for the autumn. You can find the video chat here on the homepage. Just scroll down a little bit and it's the bottom count. Later on today, that video is going to be placed on the autumn updates and forecast page, and there'll be a written report that goes with that as well. So you can either watch the video now here on the homepage, or you can wait till it's placed on the autumn updates page and have a read of the written report. So that will be around 6-7 o'clock this evening, something like that. So let's get on with the GWV Sunday Round Up. I'm going to start off with solar activity. This is the solar disk on our side of the disk today from solarham.net, and we can see that we have actually got one sunspot on the solar disk on our side of the disk right now. I have had quite a long run, actually quite a few days, of spotless condition on the sun, no sunspots at all. Just in the past day, we've had one sunspot appear. However, solar activity is officially designated to be at very low levels at the moment, and it's hardly surprising because we are coming off the back of quite a few days of completely spotless conditions. This is the GWV Summer Season Daily Solar Activity Tracker from our good friend James Ackle, just been sent through this morning. This is tracking every day's solar activity right way back to October. So we start off over here, and this is where we are right now, of course. So we have had, as I say, a few days of totally spotless conditions on the sun, no sunspots at all, and that means that the trend lines, which are indicated by the thick pink and thick green and thick red lines, they're all trending downwards. So at the moment, very much trending down in terms of solar activity and sunspot numbers. Haven't quite got down to the depths that we reached at the start of January, just here, when we did have a real plunge in solar activity. So we're not quite down to there, but we are declining quite quickly at the moment in terms of the trend lines. I wouldn't be at all surprised, actually, in the next week or two, whether we do go down to this sort of level. You'd expect us to be moving downwards because we are going remorselessly into solar minimum, and we'll be arriving at solar minimum in around a year to 18 months time. So you would expect that we would start to see the trends really beginning to push down quite quickly within the next few weeks and months. Of course, it's not a linear process, so we will get further spikes in sunspot numbers over the next year to 18 months, but the trend will very much be down during the next year to 18 months until we reach solar minimum, probably sometime in 2019. Now, the reason we look at solar activity is because there's a connection between sunspot numbers and northern blocking. So when you get to solar minimum, when you have minimum levels of sunspots, there is an increased risk of blocking over the Arctic, over the North Pole. And it's particularly true for the Atlantic and European part of the Northern Hemisphere, although I think there is a connection for North America and for Asia as well. But around or just after solar minimum, we tend to have an increased chance, no more than that, it's just kind of like loading the dice a bit, in favour of colder and more blocked winters. So we might be heading into a period of colder winters in a couple of years' time. It will be interesting to see whether that does indeed pan out like that. Obviously, we're going to be keeping you updated with the solar activity tracker over the next few weeks. This will all be encompassing to the winter updates, actually, from September, only a month or so to go before they start up. And actually, next month, a couple of weeks' time, 13th of August, we're going to be doing our final Solar Sunday of the year. So if you enjoy all of this solar activity type stuff, then we'll have a specific video for that in a couple of weeks' time. Big thanks to James Ackroyd as ever for keeping the GWV Solar Activity Tracker updated. Moving on to what's happening in the oceans. Now, I did the ENSO update for July yesterday and released that yesterday evening. So there hasn't been any development really in terms of El Nino. I think we can say El Nino is pretty much dead in the water. Now, if anything, over the past week or two, we've seen a little bit of cooling beginning to develop through the equatorial part of the Pacific Ocean. Although we are still at ENSO neutral on the warmer side of ENSO neutral. But as I've explained in videos recently and in the ENSO update, watch out for this cool water that's gathering off the coast of Chile. That can sometimes be a precursor to moving into a colder ENSO phase. So as we get through to the winter, we might find that actually we move from the warmer side of ENSO neutral to the colder side of ENSO neutral. Wouldn't go for La Nina at this point, a cold event, but we certainly might see a reduction in the temperature across the equatorial Pacific as we move through towards the end of the year. Further north in the Pacific Ocean, it's actually quite warm at the moment. The sea surface temperature anomalies in the northern Pacific Ocean are warming up quite quickly. We're beginning to lose this cold water that we've had, or cold sea surface temperature anomalies that we've had in the northeastern part of the Pacific Ocean. That's an important area when we come to do the winter updates from September, so we'll have a lot more about that in September. Looking at what's happening in the Atlantic, so it's still quite warm through the tropical part of the Atlantic Ocean, and then it's cooler to the north. So we've still got that cold blob sitting there to the south of Greenland. It's been there for quite a long while. Possibly it's moderating a little bit, and it's fairly warm on the eastern side of that, over here between Iceland and Scandinavia. It's also warm over towards Newfoundland. So I think this cold blob is probably being put under pressure a little bit from either side, from that way and from that way. So that's probably the reason that the cold blob is beginning to disintegrate a little bit. If that cold blob went, because it's fairly cool here and then it's warm there, if we lost this cold area to south of Greenland, if that warmed up, then actually we would be pretty close to a tripole. A tripole is what we look for in the winter, to have a negative NAO. So not a million miles away from that, but certainly no tripole at the moment, although when we come to look at the North Atlantic oscillations shortly, you will see that at the moment the NAO is very much on the negative side. Looking at Arctic sea ice then, so we are moving down towards the minimum of Arctic sea ice. We'll get there through the early middle part of September. This blue line here is this year, it's 2017. The green dash line is 2012. That's the death spiral. Yes, so at the moment, we're very much on a par with 2017 and 2012. They are very much lining up really close. So it's going to be a fairly big melt season. I think we can say that quite definitively. Yet again, we are very much underneath the trend, the climatic trend, which is the grey line just here. We are underneath that quite considerably. So it's going to be another big melt season. The question is, how big will the melt season be for 2017? Will we continue to stick with 2012 and have a death spiral in terms of Arctic sea ice, or will we eventually depart from 2012 and not have such a big melt season? We'll know in a couple of months' time. But at the moment, we are on a par with the melt season that was happening in 2012. But I suspect we will probably depart in the end, and we won't have as big a melt season in terms of Arctic sea ice. But certainly it is going to be another pretty big melt season, whatever happens. Arctic oscillation next. So this is the observed and forecast charts for the Arctic oscillation. The black line here tells us where we've been with the AO. The red lines where the GFS ensembles are forecasting the Arctic oscillation to go. So through the early part of the summer, this is 1st of June just here, through the early part of summer, actually we've been pretty positive with the Arctic oscillation. Where we are right now is that we're around neutral, actually, very much on the neutral line, which is this 0 just here. So we're neither positive really nor negative with the Arctic oscillation at this point. I suppose we have seen a decline in the Arctic oscillation, though, from where we was earlier in the summer. So it's possibly a little bit more sort of high pressure up over the Arctic. Remember, this is just an index that's reflecting the state of the atmosphere. So when the Arctic oscillation is positive, it tells you that you're going to have low pressure over the Arctic and over the pole, and you usually strengthen the high pressure through the mid-latitudes at this time of year, so you usually have a stronger Azores high. When the Arctic oscillation is negative, and it tells you've got high pressure over pole, you've got blocking, and when that happens in summer, usually it's a signal for a cooler, wetter pattern for the UK, because the Azores high tends to push off towards Bermuda and weaken a little bit. So it is coinciding, this drop in the Arctic oscillation, not to negative but to neutral. It is coinciding with a more unsettled, cooler phase to this summer. Up to now, it's been quite a hot summer down in the south. Past week or so, it's turned considerably more unsettled, and we're going to stay quite unsettled, I think, as we head through the next week to 10 days. We'll come on to that shortly. Now, the North Atlantic oscillation looks much more dramatic, what's going on there. So, again, this is just an index that's reflecting the state of the atmosphere, this time in the North Atlantic as opposed to the Arctic. Same idea with this chart. The black line tells us where we've been with the NAO, red lines where the NAO is forecast to go by the GFS ensembles. So again, go back into the summer. This is June the 1st, just here. You see that through most of the summer, up to now, actually the NAO has been trending quite positive. That means that the Azores high has been generally in a stronger sort of position, and that's the reason particularly southern parts of the country have been quite hot with this summer up to now. But you can see there's been a very dramatic decline, plunge really, in the NAO over the past couple of weeks. Really since the middle of July, we've been trending downwards. We are now in a very negative phase of the NAO, and the GFS ensembles are forecasting the NAO to stay negative into the first half of August as well. So this is definitely coinciding with a change in fortunes for the summer. Started off with the first half of the summer really quite hot, especially in the south, and a lot of dry weather too. The past couple of weeks, as the NAO and the AO have changed, it's become more unsettled and it's become cooler, and it looks like that's going to continue certainly through the first half of August. We are continuing to see the NAO trending negative, which, remember, it's an index that tells you what the atmosphere is doing, and this is telling us that the Azores high, instead of being very ridgy and throwing off lots of strong ridges into southern parts of England and producing the hot and dry weather that we had earlier in the summer, the Azores high is now pushed further away from us and it's in a weakened state. So it's a signal for things to be cooler and more unsettled as we go through the first week to 10 days at least of August. Right at the very end, the NAO is starting to go a little bit more positive with some of the GFS ensemble members. That might imply that by the middle part of August, potentially we could start to see some ridging coming back from the Azores. But certainly for the next week to 10 days, it's looking relatively cool and unsettled. So you can see this quite clearly on the GFS temperature and precipitation ensembles for the next couple of weeks. The red line here is the 30-year upper air temperature average, and we're cooler than average right now, set to stay that way up to the middle part of the week. Briefly a bit warm around Wednesday, but that's associated with quite a deep area of low pressure, and then after that it's just cool again through the end of the week and into next weekend. And we never go above the trend line, actually, with above the 30-year average, I should say, with the ensemble mean, which is this white line. We never go above the 30-year average right through to the middle part of August, which is over here. So it looks like we're staying pretty much on the cool side. Now, bear in mind it is high summer, so when the sun is out, it's going to feel pleasantly warm. It's not going to feel cold, even though the upper air temperatures are cooler than average. But overall, fairly cool looking ensemble that for the next week or so. Notice by the middle part of August, or second week of August really, we have got a few hot outliers starting to appear. There's some big heat pushing up into much of Europe in around a week's time, it turns very hot across many central eastern parts of Europe. I don't think you're going to get to us, but one or two of these outlier members might be picking up on that heat. But overall, it looks pretty cool and unsettled for the coming week to 10 days. Precipitation shows that we've got quite a lot of rain coming up midweek. That's associated with a deep area of low pressure. Then after that, quite a bit of precipitation continuing. Really, what we have to watch out for, I'm going to talk about this a little bit more when we get to the chart. What we have to watch out for in around a week's time, with the heat surging in Europe, and we're on the cool side of that heat, there's going to be a temperature contrast, and wherever that contrast is, somewhere could get quite a lot of rain. So we may have to watch out for some wet weather in around a week's time. Temperature anomalies show that heat wave that's coming from much of Europe up very nicely. You can see for the 30th of July through to 7th of August, many parts of Europe, particularly over in the east, we're really roasting with temperature anomalies going up to 10 degrees above average across many eastern, southeastern parts of Europe. But up in the northwest, look at this, perched on the edges of Europe, out in the Atlantic, the UK and Ireland is coming out a little bit cooler than average for the week ahead. So very much missing out on that heat surge that's coming up much of Europe in around a week's time. Precipitation anomalies for the next week, they're coming out a little bit wetter than average, so it's a continuation really of cool and unsettled weather in the next week to 10 days. So this is how the GFS is looking for Wednesday. We've got a deep, unseasonably deep area of low pressure heading in from off the Atlantic. That's going to give us a blow of wet and windy weather through the middle part of the week. Could be a little bit warm and humid in the southeast with that low pressure, but overall that's a very unsettled looking scenario for the middle part of the week. The end of the week takes that low pressure up to the north of Scotland, begins to bring in this cooler, showery west to northwesterly flow. And then after that, that's when we're starting to see the heat really surging across many parts of Europe. We are remaining with the cool and unsettled stuff in the far northwest, but the upper air temperatures do show a really big temperature contrast here between very, very hot weather that's through much of southern and east and southeastern Europe next Saturday, and this cooler, these cooler upper air temperatures out to the north and the west. Now, that temperature contrast is developing an area of low pressure. It's that one just there. The GFS is placing that around the Low Countries and Germany in a week's time. Probably a lot of very wet weather for them. But if that low pressure was developed a little bit further northwards, then certainly for southern parts of England and the southeast of England, you wouldn't rule out some very wet weather coming up next weekend. It's just one to keep an eye on. There's the upper air temperatures again for next Sunday. Look how hot it is across many central and eastern parts of Europe and down to the southeast of Europe. Really intense heat. We'll be hearing a lot about that heat, I think, if it comes off next weekend. We are on the cool side. We are in the cooler Atlantic air, but between the two air masses there is this contrast in temperature, a very big contrast in temperature, and that's going to provide the energy, I would have thought, somewhere to be producing a lot of rain. If this heat gets any closer to us, then we will find ourselves in the temperature contrast, and we'll find ourselves with a risk of some really wet weather. At the moment, it looks as though that contrast is going to be more sort of northern France, Low Countries, Belgium, Holland, and Germany. But it does need watching because some very wet weather in with that temperature contrast. And then beyond that into the second week of August, it's generally staying a little bit on the unsettled side. Although we do start to, by the 9th of August, which is day 10, we do start to show signs of trying to get a bit of a ridge going from the Azores high, but it doesn't really come to anything. And we're very quickly back to those cool and showery northwest winds. The first 10 days of August are looking quite unsettled and overall fairly cool for us, not, have to emphasise, many parts of Europe. Finally, having a look at the ECWF, so this is how things are looking midweek. Low pressure is racing in off the Atlantic, giving us a blow of wet and windy weather Wednesday and into Thursday. That low pressure clears away by Friday, leaves us in this cool and showery west to northwesterly. That continues into the weekend as well. The heat surge with GWV is further away from us, so we definitely don't have to worry about being anywhere near that temperature contrast. If GWF comes off, the heat is more restricted to southern and southeastern parts of Europe, not as far north as the GFS is getting it. So this is just a cool, showery continuation for next weekend. And then we go through beyond that, and it's staying unsettled with the ECDF right out to day 10. That's how we finish up on Wednesday the 9th of August. And it does look pretty cool and pretty unsettled as we move through into the second week of August with the ECWF. So it looks like we're going to have a fairly coolish and unsettled week to 10 days, opening week to 10 days of August. Where things go after that, we have to wait and see. Of course, we're going to be releasing the August forecast, actually, in a couple of days' time. So it'll be interesting to see what the August forecast is suggesting. But certainly the first week to 10 days is looking unsettled and probably quite cool as well. We have got that big push of heat going on across Europe, particularly southern and southeastern parts of Europe. If ECDF is right, don't even have to worry about being within the temperature contrast with that and getting heavy rain. But the GFS does bring it relatively close to us, and that will place us more within the temperature contrast, possibly producing some very wet weather next weekend. Right, don't forget to check out the seasonal models for the autumn. So that's going to be placed on the autumn updates page later on today, of course, with a written report. But that's all for now, and thanks for watching.